Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. This episode is brought to you by CampingSurvival.com. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including bug-out bags, long-term storage food, water filters, gas masks, and first aid kits. Check them out online today at CampingSurvival.com. Be sure to enter coupon code PrepperRecon for a 5% discount on your entire order. Today's guest is Jim Walton. Jim, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, no problem, man. I'm glad you could have me on. Very happy to be with you tonight.
Oh, absolutely. It's our pleasure. Tell us a little bit about your new book, The Men Who Built the End.
Well, The Men Who Built the End basically was sort of my strike at the... I don't even know if I want to call it a prepper fiction. It's more kind of like a dystopian fiction, but I tried to take a different angle. A lot of prepper fiction that I've read in the past has been, sort of about the guy with the family who's in the haze of the whatever destructive force there is out there, and he's got to get home, or he's got to get safe, or he's got to get here or there. What I did with The Men Who Built the End is I basically followed 5 individuals with very specific skill sets who are set the task breaking America's back, basically. They're using their specific skill sets to take America down at the will of a boss named Robert Shale, and he's basically the man who put them together. And beyond him is a really dark force that most of society doesn't know about. And you learn about that in the book as well. And really, it was really fun to write villains. I always think that in good movies and good books, a good villain really makes either or. And the book is really based around the villains. You know, one of them does do a turncoat on everybody and tries to fight for the right thing. But it was a lot of fun to write, and I definitely would recommend some people getting out there. It's steal over a Kindle for $5, and it's a good book. I had fun writing it.
And in The Men Who Built the End, they're sort of conspiring to do some depopulation. Is that right?
Yeah, they're basically the people behind The Men Who Built the End have their plans, and the folks, the actual villains that are characterized in the book, they have their own ideas about basically the planet's too populated with greedy, disgusting human beings that are just raping the planet of its resources, and they all have their different theories of why they're doing what they're doing. But yeah, they definitely want to get the global population down. They want to heal the planet, and it's a lot of radical ideology behind their motivations for sure.
Yeah, the Georgia Guidestones, they actually have something in reference to a limited population. I can't remember the exact number, but it's way, way less than what we have for global population right now. I think Ted Turner even recently made some remarks about needing sort of a die-off.
Well, I think the global population is an interesting topic, man. It's definitely not a finite thing, Rather, it is definitely a finite thing. It's something nobody wants to talk about, but the planet has its limits. I mean, you have to realize that. How you manage that is really the touchy thing, but, planet has its limits just like everything else. Everything has laws and limitations.
Certainly. And do you think there's men who are actually working behind the scenes right now to regulate global population, whether it's through chemicals in our food or in plastics, BPH or whatever, maybe to cause us to be less fertile? Or
I have to believe, maybe not on a grand scale to where they're affecting policy and affecting things on a as grand a scale as they'd like to, but I have to believe that there's secret societies, or even just contingencies of people that definitely look at the world in 100 years, 200 years, and say, this is not going to work out. We're going to have to do something about this. Maybe they're not even sure what they're going to do, or maybe they are taking little steps like that, like things in the water and all that sort of stuff. But then again, population growth is booming, so they're not doing a very good job if they are conspiring and poisoning us and things like that. So
yeah, that's true. It's more and more every day, right?
I mean, really, in my opinion, and this is something that I never really heard anyone speak about. I think that through the media and the manipulation of the minds of the youngsters, you know, through sort of devaluing marriage and bearing children, that has been the most effective means of population control, you know, turning marriage into sort of a joke and, you know, live free and die young sort of mentality that that everybody has out there, at least the youths, you know.
Sure. And DHS is purchasing billions of rounds of ammunition and thousands of armored vehicles. Do you think our government is preparing for some type of cataclysmic event?
Well, it's a tough question. One side of me believes that, you know what, they're trying to recommission those armored vehicles. They're trying to make some money off of those armored vehicles that they put over in the Middle East. The buying of the rounds, initially when I first saw the story, I really thought that what they were doing was they were basically taking the Chris Rock gun control position, which if you ever saw Chris Rock stand up, he talks about making, you know, you don't have to take the guns, what you have to do is make bullets cost $1,000 each. And when I seen that starting to happen, I really was thinking that's what they were trying to do, was really, really hurt the market, so that either you wouldn't be able to find ammunition, or if you found it, it would be insanely expensive, which is kind of where we are. As far as a cataclysmic event, if I were running the DHS, I would be preparing for some type of cataclysmic event. If I was looking around at the people around me and the way we're spending money and the way China's coming online powerful, there's so many things and so many, and then the uncontrollable, like what happened in the Philippines, things like that can pop up whenever, you know, God wants them to. I would definitely be planning about them, so I think, yes, they probably are planning for something.
And do you think that they're planning for a planned event, or you think they're just planning for just anything? Could be a inevitable economic collapse, or something like what we just saw in the Philippines.
I could be very naive. You could call me very naive, Mark, when it comes to the government, but they couldn't unveil a website that they've been working on for how long now? Basically, a man's legacy was at stake in breaking this new website out and having it work properly. And that's just one of a million examples that the government really is incapable of anticipating or planning on really any level, in my opinion. So they might be doing their best to get ready for something like that, but I really doubt that they're planning anything or have the ability to plan anything. I know there's a lot of conspiracy out there with 9/11 and all that sort of stuff, but like I said, I could be naive, but when I look at what the government has to do and fail at doing every single day of my life, I don't think they have it. I really don't think they have the people in place or the management skills to get anything grand scale done like that. Not to say that they couldn't step into something real bad and have us all in a bad situation, but I just don't think anything planned is happening. But I do think they're anticipating something economically probably very soon, if I had to guess.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Obamacare is it's just an absolute mess. But then there's been other things that the government has done that have been very, very effective. You know, the facial recognition software that they have now, and a lot of the things that they've been able to do with technology that's just light years ahead of probably even the things that we know. Of course, I think that most of that is done through private contractors and not exactly the government.
For sure.
But when they really, really need something to work, it seems like they're able to find the people to make it work. And maybe Obamacare was just something that they didn't really get the right people for. They just thought they could do it themselves.
It's definitely possible, but 9 times out of 10, I don't bet on the government. I'll tell you that much.
Yes.
They're not a very reliable resource.
No.
Unless, of course, you're looking for someone who just wants to inhale dollars. Then they're the one you go to.
Oh, they're good at that.
You know, if you're drowning in dollars, then go right to them. They'll take care of you. That's about all you can count on them for.
Yeah, they're very good at that. And you've got a weekly podcast. It's called I Am Liberty.
Yeah, I Am Liberty. I Am Liberty is another interesting thing, man. It's, probably like yourself. I don't know much about your background, but probably like yourself and many other people who do super informative. Your website's great. Podcasts and blogs and things like that. I came into this thing very fresh. Like 2 years ago, I started doing the website and the podcast, and basically what it was we got hit by a hurricane 2 years ago. I had a newborn son in the house with me, my wife. Trees went down in our neighborhood. We couldn't get out of our neighborhood because of that. We had no electricity. We had no food, really. We had no water stored, but luckily the water was still running. But, that was bouncing around in my head. And basically I was castrated right before my very eyes. Being the provider of the family, I looked around and I was like, man, this is pitiful. This is absolutely pitiful. Because it wasn't a cataclysmic event here in Virginia. It was just the circumstance we were in. We needed formula, diapers, that kind of stuff. Baby was brand new. So from there I said, you know what? Let me start listening to some of these podcasts. And then, basically I snaked my way into one of the broadcasting stations and started a show basically for neophytes. And that's still what it is. I bring people on that know 100 times, 1,000,000 times more than I do. And basically I try to pick as much knowledge out of their brain as I can. And the listening audience enjoys that, of course, because, I'm genuinely interested in the people that I'm interviewing because they have the knowledge I need. And that's basically what I Am Liberty's about. But it's also, for those of you who need a little more, I don't know enough about singular prepping topics to do an entire show. A lot of times I go off on tangents. I was a chef for many years, so you'll find me ranting about that sort of stuff and food. And, I'm a what am I? A late 80s baby, so, ADHD, that whole thing. It's hard for me to hold a thought too long and all that stuff. So that's kind of what the show is, basically.
And how well do you think DC is adhering to the standards set forth by our founding fathers?
I don't know if I can think of any one standard that they are holding to anymore. To be honest, I don't think that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happy, I don't know. I don't see any of that. It seems to me like life, well, they definitely fall on the side of abortion. Liberty, we don't even need to talk about liberty, I don't think. And the pursuit of happiness, I guess it depends on how you look at happiness. If you're sitting on the couch watching Monday Night Football and happiness is that check in the mail twice a month or once a month, and that's their idea of pursuit of happiness. But as far as motivating people to get out and be successful on their own merit, yeah, I don't see any of that. I don't see any of that coming out of D.C.
Yeah, and the ones that get the check in the mail every other week, they're not really pursuing it. They just sit there. So
right. Well, that's a great point. Right.
And it's at the cost of somebody else that is unable to pursue their happiness because they're just a cog in the machine, just a hamster on the wheel, because they've got to support themselves, and increasingly more people in the cart, in the wagon being pulled, and less people pulling the wagon.
That's a great analogy. And the thing about that is, when you have that many people, I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and I found a stat from Michael Snyder's Economic Collapse blog that said that 50% of the country is receiving some level of government benefit. 50%.
Yeah, almost 11 million have left the workforce since Obama took office, and I suspect that a large portion of that 11 million isn't because things were so good and they were able to sell their business and retire and just live the life Al O'Reilly. I suppose that a lot of it is because there's no work there.
I mean, that's really what it comes down. It either comes down to this. Here's my other train of thought, Mark, and I don't like to point fingers at folks who are trying to get on their feet. I know a lot. I'm in the business of feeding the hungry. That's what I do for a living, literally. And So there is a distinction between those individuals who are genuinely in a bad spot and use those programs to get where they need to be, but there is a great contingency of people who I think are finding that, you know what? And really it just comes down to math, Mark, because, you know, you look at people who are on the system right now with children. You know, say you have 3 kids, you're a single mother, they all have health care, yada, 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 you get this much money per month, you get this much for food stamps. You don't have education, so you decide, well, maybe I'll go work at Walmart for $7 or $8 or even $9. Then I lose all my health care, I lose all this extra money, and really it's just not viable for me to go to work. I think a lot of it has to do with that. People are finding out that they really qualify for a lot more from the government than they realize, and they're looking at work like, this doesn't add up for me, you know?
Yeah, it's a negative incentive.
Great, it's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is.
So do you feel confident that the Fed will be able to successfully fulfill their dual mandate of full employment and price stability in the near future?
I really don't feel confident that the Fed will be successful, period. At anything but taking money. I'm sorry, like I said, I really have very little faith in what they do for people other than hold them down. I think their whole mindset is really construed right now, man, misconstrued. It's really in a bad spot. They're in a bad position with the people in power. I think they're pushing for something that's unattainable, even if it sounds warm and fuzzy in their heads, you know. We know that they're pushing towards some sort of socialism style of government, which, I mean, it never worked. It never will work. It doesn't work. And capitalism feeds people, and at the end of the day, that's what it is. You know what I mean? Capitalism gets food in bellies.
Yeah.
And really, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about roofs, it's about running water, and it's about food.
Yeah,
we're moving further and further away from that, which is frightening to me.
All of the socialist countries and the communist countries are seeing that they cannot plan the economy and do the job of the free market effectively just because it's just too much work, and and they can't do it. And the countries like China and Russia are moving more towards capitalism, while we here in America are moving closer and closer to socialism and communism.
I agree with you 100%. We watched our buddies in Europe fall face first trying to do the socialism thing, and still here we go. Here we go plugging away at it our turn. It's really an interesting thing, that socialism, man. It's almost like, I don't know if I can think of the right analogy. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the guy who had the cart with the wings on it. Mm-hmm. I think I might have heard this somewhere else though, so I don't want to steal the idea, but before he looked over the edge, and over the edge he saw a bunch of those wings and a bunch of those flying machines smashed all over the ground. Yet he backed up with the car and took off over the cliff anyway, thinking that, you know what, my machine is the one that's going to fly.
This time is different.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the mindset. Exactly. I'm not going to wind up in that rubble heap, but we are going to wind up in that rubble heap. Right. Depending on how, mortifying that is. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates inflation to be roughly 1.7%. Do you think that number is accurate?
That's another interesting one, to be honest, because, I mean, America almost kind of dictates inflation, really. I think that number is completely false. With the tactics being used by retailers, as well as, our ability to influence the rest of the world. I think as the Asian nations and other nations begin to buy more gold and to begin to take the American middleman out of their currency swap, then I think we'll really be able to see what's what. But until then, between the retailers and between the Fed pumping the money the way they're doing it, we'll never know what's going on with inflation.
Yeah, you're right about the retailers. I mean, coffee used to be, it was about $2.50 a pound, the one I used to drink, and it was a pound, and then it went to $3 and it went to around 14 ounces. It's now $5 and it's around 11. It's around 11 ounces, so it's just a little over half of the size that it used to be. And they've done the same thing with ice cream, and they've done the same thing with cereal. And while it looks like the prices only went up marginally, if you factor in the reduced amount of product that you're purchasing, it's really mostly more than doubled.
The interesting thing is, though, here's the sort of the, maybe not the end game, but here's the future. And what I don't understand how it will work out. But China's obviously posturing to be the dominant power and the dominant currency by backing their money with gold and all that sort of thing. Now, what I don't understand what their end game is, because they want to move to obviously be more prosperous, but the way they got to where they are and the way they're growing is based on the devaluation of their own currency. So once they eclipse ours and once they become this powerful global currency, they won't be able to sell their lead crap to the world at, those incredibly low prices. So then everybody goes back to work in America. Because now all of a sudden, you know what? American products are the cheapest on the market. Well, they're cheaper than China now. So why not buy American? It's locally made and yada, 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 all that. So I don't understand what the end game is with China. I know we're speaking of inflation, and really I see inflation being real crazy once those currencies swap. But like I said, once China really gets rolling and their currency starts to value up again, their products aren't going to be cheap little trinkets that Americans feast on. So I don't know.
They'll have to change their business model to adapt. But they typically get people that are a little bit more savvy economically into their government roles than what we tend to do here in America. Most of the politicians in America know absolutely nothing about any type of economics. You get a few exceptions. Ron Paul, obviously, probably being the largest exception of that rule, and maybe Simpson and Bowles. They had some pretty good ideas on some things to do to curb down the deficit spending. But largely, all of our politicians are morons when it comes to economics.
Well, I think it reflects perfectly.
You're right. They're put there by the low information voter.
I mean, if you had to paint the picture of a country run by people who know nothing about an economy, you would paint this one.
That's right. And it reflects the people that put them in there, I think, as well.
Oh, for sure.
And what about the employment numbers? The BLS says that we have 7.3% unemployment now. Do you think that's accurate?
Well, I think the whole way that they calculate unemployment is kind of botched, to be honest. I think we really need to lump in, well, first of all, the racket that is disability has to be somehow factored into, and I guess there's no way to factor it into without really recognizing that for a great portion of it is a racket. And, again, with the labor, there are people who are being taken out of work by the government also. Not physically, but with that same reverse incentive that we were just talking about. So that's such a muddy picture. It's hard to even place any kind of, and then again, who's taking these numbers? It's one of those things that's regurgitated by the government that I put very little faith in. You know what I mean? I look around in the local communities, and I look and see, like I said, I'm in the eye of the storm every day. I see the people who come up and who need help, and I deal intimately with the people who help those who need help. What I can tell you is the numbers are going up and up and up every day. There's more people lining up for food in more places across my state. That's what I could speak to. I've really reached a point, Mark, with the media, just absolute. I mean, there's so much media out there now. I'm even a part of it now. You're a part of it. There's so many people putting out so much information. It's really hard for me to say anything certain unless I'm seeing it, hearing it, feeling it. And that's just me.
Sure. And, of course, we're going to have links to purchase The Men Who Built the Inn through Amazon. And that's available in the Kindle edition, and that's also available in paperback. Is that correct?
Yes, available on Kindle, available on paperback. Definitely love to see some people get it for the holidays. Buy it for that crazy man or woman in your life who likes to read about those sort of end of days books. And yeah, like I said, it's very much in the vein. I guess I grew up reading a lot of Dean Koontz, so it's got a lot of suspense to it. I think you folks will enjoy it out there for sure.
And then can you tell the folks when and where they can find I Am Liberty, the podcast?
Yes, definitely. The website is iamliberty.wordpress.com, and we've got archives up on there. Just click on the archive tab. We have a live show Friday nights, 7 Eastern Time, and that's live at prepperbroadcasting.com. We've got a chat room available in there also. It's very interactive, very fun show. And prepperpodcast.com also hosts a show on Thursday nights. It's a pre-recorded show, but we often have a lot of fun on that Thursday show also. So Thursday, Friday, you can get I Am Liberty. It's available basically when the sun comes up on Thursdays for download or for stream on prepperpodcast.com. And like I said, it's live 7 Eastern Time on prepperbroadcasting.com.
Jim, thanks so much for making time to come on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Godspeed with the book.
Definitely. I thank you.
Hey, Prepper Recon fans. I just published my new book, American Exit Strategy, Book 1 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles. Liberty-minded individuals who believe in the Constitution will find this near-future dystopian novel to be right up their alley. Those who are looking to be more informed about the potential threats to America's financial stability will learn what to watch for and how to prepare themselves for an economic collapse. In Book 1, America is on the cusp of financial annihilation. Matt and Karen Baer face the challenges of Main Street during a full-scale financial meltdown. Government borrowing and monetary creation have reached their limits. When funds are no longer available for government programs, widespread civil unrest erupts across the country. Matt and Karen are forced to move to a more remote location, and their level of preparedness is revealed as being much less adequate than they believed prior to the crisis. Meanwhile, Paul Randall, a third-party presidential candidate, arises to push back against the welfare and warfare spending that have bankrupted our country. While he's gained expansive acceptance across the country, the fight has just begun. Paul Randall proposes a plan to mitigate the coming hyperinflationary collapse, which is a mathematical certainty. His plan is known as the American Exit Strategy. American Exit Strategy uses survival fiction to take an in-depth look at the real-life politics and economics behind the issues that are likely to trigger a currency collapse or financial meltdown in the near future. American Exit Strategy is a work of fiction until it becomes history. Go to AmericanExitStrategy.com today to learn more or purchase your copy for Kindle in PDF format or paperback. Happy prepping.